I have been getting a lot of feedback from people who come to the meetups, especially for this year. Like, there should be some kind of focus on what's relevant today. How can I be a more efficient engineer if I'm already one? Or how do I get a job in this industry and show them that I'm not just another name or another statistic? Like,
Yeah.
what sort of things should I be thinking about and what sort of things should I be doing? So I would like to answer those kind of questions. Maybe first, like, just introduce yourself formally, like for people who might be watching, and then you can get into like how you started and then what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, my name is Sylvana Santos. I am currently a senior full stack engineer at Maribel Health. I just joined about 3-ish months ago, so fairly new. Previous to that, I was working at Codecademy. I was there for almost 5 years. I started there as an apprentice and worked my way up to a senior position there. Yeah, that's my software engineering career. Previous to that, I was a teacher for a little bit, but yeah, that's pretty much me. Oh, and I guess in terms of like more detail on my focuses as an engineer, I like to say that I'm full stack and I try to dip my toes in both front end and back end. But most of my experience at Codecademy was more front end focused. So I definitely feel more comfortable with React, TypeScript, although I'm not in the weeds as some other people, but I can get by with my TypeScript skills. But I do have some experience on the back end I learned on Node and Express. At Codecademy, we used Ruby on Rails and then New Place using Django. So I've dipped my toes on different back end languages as well. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Very good. That's interesting that you mentioned a lot of those back-end frameworks and stuff like that. I think for people who were studying, especially at bootcamps and doing like front-end and back-end, during that time, there were a lot of different types of back-end. You had Django, you had Ruby on Rails, you had Node, and then you had PHP too, if you had ever touched that, especially if you had your own WordPress site or something like that. Like, a lot of that has changed, especially over time.
Yeah.
What would you say is like the winner today if you were to start your own backend?
That's a good question. I still feel like it's been a while since I've used like JavaScript for the backend, but it feels like it makes things a little bit more seamless to be able to work in one language from front end to back end. So I feel like personally that would still be my preference. And especially now with like Next.js, there's so much that is built in with Next.js for being able to build like a backend through there, which is pretty cool. Like in my new job, I was exposed to Next.auth, which helps with authorization like on the back end. So it's really powerful. So I feel like if I had to choose for myself, that would be where I would go. But there's definitely some, like, if you're using something like Django or Ruby on Rails, there is a lot of like magic stuff that happens there that you may not get out of something like just pure Express. But I would still go with a JavaScript. I think at this point, like, I would just use Next.js for front end and back end, but it's preference. Honestly, at the end of the day, like, most of them will get the job done.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think too, especially now, like in my own experience, I think just having some kind of experience with each of these frameworks shows that you're flexible enough.
Yeah.
To accompany. And even if you have a preference where you're like, I like JavaScript on the front and the back end, if you can work with other frameworks that might already exist or other teams that are managing frameworks that already exist, you can still show competency. So I think maybe that also matters, speaks a lot to what's resume worthy.
Definitely, yeah. Like, I think that, yeah, like in terms of an applicant, I feel like I wouldn't focus too much on, I need to learn this new framework because I've never used it before and that's popular right now. Like, obviously being able to add it in there as like a bullet point is always helpful, but I think what's more important, like you said, is being able to show that like you can hop into a new framework and get things going. And for anyone who has maybe been at multiple jobs or used different frameworks, like once you learn one, it's pretty easy to learn another, but being able to showcase like I can really pick this up quickly and draw parallels between the two, things like that to me is more important as an applicant.
Okay, I want you to think back a little bit to the past.
Okay.
And for the next question, really just, again, this is like for people watching and just trying to like find out like if this is what they want to do. go back to like why you wanted to learn, like why did you want to make a transition to this industry, and like what made it like interesting for you, and how did you, I guess first answer that, but like we can go like after that to like how did you motivate yourself to keep going?
Yeah. For a little bit more context on me, I did do a little bit of, I studied electrical engineering in school. I was not too thrilled about the hardware side of things, but I did have to take some programming classes as a part of that. And I really enjoyed those programming classes. I feel like programming is just a different way of thinking. I remember that I used to take classes, all of the engineers, like regardless of what type of engineering major you were, would have to take like a programming class. And I remember that there was people in that class that to me were like geniuses. Like they would understand like physics that I just couldn't wrap my head around. And they would take that class and not all of them would feel that comfortable with it. Like it didn't click with them. So I just feel like it's a different way of thinking. Whereas like me, I'm like, I didn't get the physics, but the coding, I got it a little bit more. So I think it's just a different way of thinking. And in a way, you can be very creative with it. So I just have a natural, like, I enjoy it. But I also got into it just because I feel like it's very powerful to be able to build like a website or build some sort of application. One of the reasons that I wanted to get into it, I was working as a teacher, and it felt like as a teacher, you have limited effect. Like you can only affect really only the 30, let's say, students that you have in your classroom. But it feels like with building software, you can have a positive impact to a larger group of people. So I think, that's just really cool being able to. I remember I started at Codecademy, and like my very first ticket was like changing the padding on a button. But I thought it was so cool that as soon as I deployed those changes, I was like, oh, thousands of people are seeing that button that I changed.
Sure.
So being also just like exciting about it, but also knowing that you can really impact a lot of people with the work that you do. I think it's powerful.
Yeah. So you use that as your motivation to basically keep going. Like you started off though as an electric engineer candidate, or you were?
Yeah, so I studied that, but I never went into it after
Okay.
college. I did the teaching thing for a bit, and then I was like, I still want to be coding. Like I was coding on the side and doing little projects, and I really enjoyed it. So I was like, I'm gonna try to give this a shot, and luckily it worked out.
Okay. When you first started coding, was your first language JavaScript?
So technically, the first language that I learned was MATLAB.
Okay.
And then after that, I learned like assembly language.
Wow. Okay. Way deep end, actually.
Yeah. But in terms of, like higher level of JavaScript was the first one that I learned. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Everyone says that JavaScript is the roughest language to learn because it's not strongly typed compared to other languages.
Yeah.
There are a lot of quirks that can throw people off, especially around little things like undefines and equals, and if you do if comparisons with like actual string data or so whatever, right? Stuff will give you funky results. And so a lot of people say JavaScript is not a good language to learn as a first language, especially if it's high level. A lot of people point to Python or whatever.
Yeah.
How would you say your experience was when you first started learning JavaScript? Because I can tell you, like with me too, like when I first started learning JavaScript, I was very confused by all the syntax, and I made a lot of syntax errors. And so I had to read a lot of books, especially like Eloquent JavaScript. There's a book that I always go by, which, especially at the beginning of my career, I was very much a John Reisig fan. He made Query. So the books that he wrote about JavaScript were really helpful to me. But yeah, just in your case, like how did you feel?
Yeah, that's right. So JavaScript was the first language that you learned, or you learned it after learning?
So technically, the first language that I knew was Java.
Okay.
And I went to PHP and JavaScript. And
Got it.
I was doing PHP work on the back end and then JavaScript on the front end. So I would say it was probably like the third language.
Got it. Yeah. That's interesting to hear you say that it can be a difficult one to start off with. I can definitely see how that would be the case. I almost feel like maybe because I had some programming knowledge before then, I almost felt like it helped me to understand the value of types more. I feel like going through all of those pitfalls and like running into those little like idiosyncrasies was almost helpful, because then once I transitioned to, okay, I need to learn TypeScript, it really helped me to be like, oh, okay, this is like the missing piece. I understand why this is useful, but I can see when that's like all after the fact, right? Oh, that was like, it's in the end, it was good that I went through all of that, but when you're in it and you're like struggling, it's definitely, this doesn't feel beginner friendly. But I think in the end, it's a good thing. I felt similarly so in the boot camp that I went to, I did a boot camp as well, even though I did some programming in college. We had to learn, like, as an example, we had to learn like SQL, and then we would learn like SQLize, right? And then I remember that everyone in the boot camp would be like, why did we have to go through the torture of learning SQL when we could have just used SQLize? Or even learning like Redux, right? Or not Redux, Redux.
Yeah.
And going through the pitfalls of that and then finding alternatives to that. It sucks when you're in it, but I think long term it does help you really like, it helps things stick, I think, and understand the value of certain libraries, certain frameworks, things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so you said something else that's interesting too, and this is something I hear a lot. We're at a time where work is probably really hard for a lot of people. If you notice now, like companies are cracking down harder and putting people through more difficult review processes and all that stuff. So I would say actually, like, one thing that I would ask is, like you were saying, like you had to get through the grit. What does that feel like? What do you remember it feeling like? And what recently do you feel like with that? What does it take to be an engineer?
Yeah. I'll try to answer as honestly as possible, because I feel like people, it's easy to like focus on it's like really satisfying, but there is a lot of it that it just sucks at times.
Sure.
I definitely remember, especially at the beginning, I don't know, maybe some people are better about this, but I fall victim to the like comparison trap.
Yeah.
Where like I would pick up a ticket and like, I would read the ticket and I'd think, okay, that's super straightforward. I should be able to knock that out pretty quickly. And then just like things go wrong, like things go unexpectedly, and you just feel like I must be doing something wrong. Somebody else would pick up this ticket and they have no problem with it. I think what I found though was that most of the time that was like a narrative that I had written in my head that wasn't accurate. Like a lot of times I would run into something unexpected and I was like, someone else could debug this real quick. And I would like hammer away at it as long as I could. And then I would say, okay, I have to go ask like somebody else for help.
Yeah. You're like picking up work, but then when you start getting into it, you're like, the thing that's blocking you from like actually getting the work done is like how you feel, right? You're like dealing with emotional fog.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's something that people don't talk about. Like engineering is like emotional. When you're starting off, it's like the emotional side of it is almost the harder part. Yeah, you're struggling with like technical issues, but what feels difficult is the emotional side that you're like, what's wrong with me? But yeah, and I think that, like I said, most of the time, these narratives of that I would put in my head just weren't accurate. Like when I would go to, let's say, a senior engineer and ask for help, it wasn't like they would immediately look at the problem and be like, oh yeah, you just did this wrong. I fixed it in 2 minutes. And most of the time I was like, all right, let's dig into it together. And they didn't immediately have a solution. So it wasn't like, oh, this is a trivial thing. So most of the time that narrative is wrong. But I think that also at the beginning, you also feel like I should be able to figure this out on my own, or why am I not able to? And then I think the more and more you end up being forced to reach out for help, you realize that's just how engineering is. Like everyone at the very least needs like a sounding board. Like just having a sounding board can be super helpful in itself. Like a lot of times it wasn't even that the other person would solve it for me. It was like through talking it out, I realized, oh wait, this is what I need to do. So I think it takes a while for you to let go of, I need to figure this out on my own, or it's on me, and you realize that's just how it is, and it's going to be that way like 10 years in, 15 years in.
Yeah. Actually, you're making me think about something I did recently with my daughter. So I gave her like a phone case holder.
Okay.
You would put on your car dashboard, or it goes into the car bin.
Oh.
A bag safe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So you get in the box, and then she's only 8 years old right now.
Okay.
All the parts are broken out, right? And then you have to put them together. And so for me, it's like really easy to do because like I just know, okay, I do this, and then I connect this, and then I tighten it over here. But I thought, okay, why don't I try giving this to my daughter and seeing how do you figure this out? There might be instructions too. you might be able to scan a QR code. I don't know if she knows how to do that and view instructions on her
Yeah.
phone. But I did give her some guidance, but
Yeah.
it was very overwhelming for her. She just could not figure it out.
Yeah.
And she just kept complaining and yelling and saying, "This is dumb. I don't get it. Why would you give me
Yeah.
that?" And then I was like laughing because I was like, "This is so easy. I can do it like really quickly." But yeah, I like what you're saying to me makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think if you're not trained to think a certain way, it's just going to be ultra difficult, even if you are a smart person. Because my daughter is pretty smart otherwise,
Yeah.
but like it's not. And I think this is where a lot of that emotional fog comes from. It's not that you're not smart, it's just that you're not trained to think like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a perfect scenario for one, how it feels to be in that situation.
Yeah.
But two, I think it's not like you're some genius by knowing how to put this phone thing together. It's just done it before. And I think a lot of times when you're in your daughter's like point of view, you're thinking like, oh, this other person's a genius. I'm just like an idiot that doesn't know. But it's just, oh, this person has probably dealt with this issue like 10 times, 30 times throughout their career. So they already have the tool set to be able to figure it out more easily than you would. But the only way that you're going to get to where they are at is to like go through it and build the tool sets for yourself.
Exactly.
I love that analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's, what we should iterate to people is that this career is really a lot about just the part of the difficulty is like understanding, and maybe it takes a long time for people because that part of your life, especially if you're a new engineer, you can be like self-defeating. You can be stuck in like this emotional fog where you just are unable to move to the next step because you're afraid of all the different things that could happen if exposed to other people that you don't know.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't know this. Like vulnerable state, right?
Yes, that's so true. Yeah, especially when you're starting off because you're like, oh, I don't want them to think that they shouldn't have hired me.
Yeah, I need that money, please. I'm $20,000 in debt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, this is good. I think you picked up a lot of your core skill at Codecademy, right? Like your year. So what was it about that experience that you really liked, and would you say that has helped prepare you a lot for where you are now? Yeah,
I think that I'm very thankful for all of the senior engineers that I worked with especially when I started off as an apprentice in the early days of my career, because I think they were very great at meeting me where I was at. Like when we were in pairing sessions, they weren't like, all right, just follow me and try to keep up. It was like, you're going to really drive it. I'm going to ask you questions to get you thinking the way that I'm thinking, or like point out, guide you in the right direction, but you're going to get there on your own. And that's just a much better way of learning than just watch me and try to absorb as much as you can. So that was really great. And I think that sort of gave me, I was more willing to come to people to ask for help because I was like, it's just enjoyable to work with these people.
Yeah.
But I think it also gave me the confidence to also take on things that I just had no business like taking on. But I was like, if I run into trouble, I know that I have a great team that's going to support me through it. And just because they were helping me to think in the ways that they were thinking and giving me tips for debugging and things like that, I think it, again, gave me that tool set to be able to take on something completely new, even if I didn't know much about it. So that was really great. I think also too, Codecademy had a really great tech community. Like we did a lot of events internally where we could read articles and discuss them, or we have discussions about the state of our code base, things like that. Or like people would do like little tech talks. Oh, here's a new like framework that I've tried out on a side project. Let me like tell you guys about it and what I learned. So it just felt this wonderful like state of I have so much to learn, and I'm in an environment where there's plenty that I can be absorbing. So it was a great time.
That's good. So definitely, I think that what you were saying there, that's also really helpful because a lot of people ask whether they should be like in a boot camp even today, right? Or they are wondering the value of college. Like a lot of people say that they're self-taught and they didn't go to these boot camps or they didn't go to colleges and stuff like that. But again, now like companies are cracking down harder and people are like asking like to know what you know more upfront and trying to see. Would you say in your moment now, like where you are, right? Or even if you have been just like looking at other companies and I don't know, like how if you're thinking about like where you want to be like in 5-10 years and all that, but
Yeah.
do you feel like, you need more training after all of that, or are you done? Like, where would you want to go? Are you very feel comfortable in your current company right now? What do you think?
Yeah. I just started at the new company, so now
Sure.
and
Yeah.
if one from the company is looking, I'm not
Yeah,
looking.
yeah. And you could take the fifth on any of that. But I'm just saying, like,
Okay.
yourself, and I think this is important to any company, right? They want to always have somebody who is thinking about the future, who is
Yeah.
like self-improve. So you're fine.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't say that I feel like, oh, I'm equipped with everything, but I think I'm equipped with the skills to be able to learn new things. I definitely think that I have a good breadth of knowledge now that I've built up, but I don't feel like I guess React is maybe the closest to that, but
Yeah.
I really need to hone in on one thing and really do like more of a deep dive on one thing.
Sure.
But that just comes with time. And I think also I don't think it's also necessary to do a deep dive. I think I can still progress in my career without being like, oh yeah, I'm an expert in React, like I know whatever. But I think that's the direction that I would like to go in, to identify something that I can really hone in on. But I think it's okay to be a jack of all trades. Yeah, and I think I can lean on at this point, I think I've proven enough that I can tackle something new and be successful in it that will take me where I need to go, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So one more thing. Let's talk about interviews itself, right?
Yeah.
What has your experience been with different companies while interviewing? What do you remember those questions to be like, and what were some of the challenges you had to deal with, like at those interviews, if you don't mind?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I haven't done that many interviews, but I can speak to what I have experienced. I think one of the things that can be really frustrating as someone who's like on the job hunt is that a lot of times the interviews are not always matching like what you're going to be doing in your day
Sure.
to day. So I think those are the questions that always would like throw me off, where I was like, oh God, like this isn't really something that I've been in the industry for a couple of years now, but I've never dealt with that question that you've just thrown at me.
Yeah.
But I think that I almost use it as a way of, because I think even though they're interviewing you, you're also gauging whether this company is like a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And I think that I had some experiences where the interviewer like acknowledged that. For example, not getting hung up on syntax. I think it's a really bad experience if I know what I'm doing. I've been hit with this problem and I can see a way forward, but I'm getting stuck on syntax because this is a language that I'm not familiar with. I feel like if they're just watching you struggle with that, like it's not great use of either person's time, the interviewer or the interviewee. So I feel if you're feeling that way in an interview, it's probably an indicator that they are also not gauging for the right like skill set.
Yeah.
But I think that it can be frustrating that it feels like preparing for interviews almost feels like a job on its own, because they can feel so different to the actual daily tasks that you get. But I think that what they're trying to get at is like, how do you deal with a difficult situation? And I've definitely been in one of those interviews where I was like hit with something. I'm like, I have no idea where you want me to go with this thing. But I feel like I try to talk myself down in those moments to think, okay, they're not, at the end of the day, they're not really caring if I get to a solution here. They mostly just want to see how I deal with being thrown into something new, because that is a part of the job. That part is true. Like, you are going to get thrown into things that you don't know anything about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I feel like just trying to talk through your thought process and being like, hopefully, if it's a good interviewer, being able to ask them questions or just work through it together so it feels a little bit less daunting. But yeah, I feel like I didn't answer your question at all, but
That's okay. Like, you're helping me think about all the stuff that somebody would ask me too, right? 'Cause a lot of this too is the themes so far have been the job industry is hard. I've been studying a lot. I did a boot camp where I've been working as something in this industry, but now my skills are out of date. So I'm just asking, especially for more veteran people like yourself, right? What are you doing for yourself, like in terms of these things that could be affecting you too, right? Like in some way, right? So I see you as someone who's thriving. I see you as someone who is doing pretty well. So I feel like maybe there's certain things that you have or things that you think about that help elevate you to your latest success. I want to know too, right? If you're doing well, what could you share with the audience? Like, what could you share as good advice that maybe you thought of like recently?
Yeah, I definitely, for me personally, I think that a lot of my success comes from being able to communicate well and being able to also ask the right questions, I think. And I almost see myself as more of an observer because, for example, at my new company, I feel like everyone at my company is way more experienced than me. Not I feel that way. They are way more experienced than me.
Yeah.
And so I almost, to me, I view that as my, I don't want to say superpower because that feels very like conceited, but I almost use that to my advantage. Like the fact that I see myself as the weakest link, maybe, but I use that as, okay, how I think that it can be a good, what's the word, like opposite to, if you're working with someone who's really senior, really experienced, right? It's good to have someone who's on the other end of the spectrum that is almost like not questioning, but like for improvement, right? Like, how did you get there? How did you come up to this solution?
Yeah.
Does this actually make sense? Even just as a simple example, I think if you go into a new company, as a beginner, or I still view myself as a beginner, it should, like, a code base should be readable to somebody who just came out of a boot camp, let's say. Like, code should be readable and understandable. Okay, there's going to be things that maybe that person is not familiar with, but they should be able to go through your code base and have a general understanding of it. And so when I come into a new company and it's not that way, I see that as an opportunity to be like, okay, maybe I can't help with these like high level things, but I can give feedback on what it's like as a newcomer coming into this company and working in this code base. So even as a beginner, you are bringing a perspective that maybe other people at the company don't have. And that is powerful in itself. And you can use that as an opportunity to prove your value.
Yeah.
So I see, that's a small example, but I think that there's a lot, like, you being new to something is a good thing, and you can look at it from a different perspective and a new, like, critical eye.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that is a huge thing you just touched on, right? Like, I think this is something that, you know, even for just when I mentor people, I always try to say communication is like a huge thing. A lot of people are really good at just the coding part and writing code. But then if you ask them to explain what they did, they have a lot of trouble explaining it. And if you get into, like you said, perspectives, especially because you're new and you have the fresh perspective, right? I think that's the thing. Then it's somebody who wrote this massive monolithic code. They have not thought that way. So for them, it's like you're putting them on the spot all of a sudden. And they're not able to articulate what it's doing. That's actually bad, because, and in terms of business too, right? Like you're saying, you've spent all this time at the business building this thing. You can't justify why it's that way. And if you, who does have fresh perspective, can see the holes in it, or at least, like, my strategy has always been, I'll just tell you this because I feel like it's fair for me to share my experience. At the beginning, like when I was like a little kid, like maybe like in my 20s, right? I was like, oh, I always think this code sucks, or this is not so good. It's not matching the textbook. It's not beautiful. So I would say that, but then I would get into a lot of political trouble at the company that I was with. Because then, like, you're making people annoyed and angry, and everybody's in a rush in the business world. I think a lot of people forget that compared to the college world. In college, you have more time, you can party, you can go do whatever you want, and then finish your homework last minute. But in the real world and business world, you're always working on these things in tandem with other things that you might be doing, and you're moving fast. And So a lot of times too, like you'll be in different context modes. And if somebody else comes in and they say, this thing sucks or this thing sucks, now it's like you're on the defensive and you have to go back and prove it, which you do have to do anyway.
Yeah.
But it also causes turmoil in the company.
Yeah.
My strategy at the beginning was like dumb because like I would then put myself into a hot seat and then I produce way better code than the rest of the team. That's very difficult to be in because then you end up doing a lot of all-nighters. I could only do that in my 20s. Sure. I started saying, okay, you know what? I don't want to attack everybody at the company. I would rather learn from this person who is not communicating well. And there were a lot of people like that. There are even people like that today. But I know one thing I'm really good at is communicating. So I feel like in my ways, like you were saying, a superpower for me is I can understand the nerds. And then I can digest nerds.
Yes.
Feel like English.
Yeah, no, I totally relate to that. Yeah. Like, I think that, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people do talk about, oh, soft skills can be important, but I think that it's not really explained. It's not just, oh, I can have a conversation or I can talk to like non-technical people. I think those little things like that where you're being a little bit more critical about things that maybe other people don't pay attention to. I think that's important. But I definitely relate to that. Is a skill that in itself is a skill, like being able to distill very complicated things into something that more people can understand. I think that's important. Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing too with HackBuddy, just in case you were wondering as well, or the audience. It's just, there are a lot of things that are coming out all the time. There's a lot of people talking about important things that seem like ultra important, but sometimes it can all feel overwhelming. So like I feel like my niche is really just distilling it down. Saying, here's what you probably should know for now.
Yeah. And I hope also that it's a bit unfortunate the way the industry is right now, but I think that if there was more entry-level positions at companies, I think that having that is so important because when you hire someone new, you want people like that who can communicate and have done the work of distilling this complex architecture into something that you can quickly onboard people. Like, I think it is a really important thing, especially for a growing company.
Yeah, exactly. Just some other questions and then we can keep it open, or because we do have maybe 10 or 15 minutes at this point. I guess like I have some questions that I wrote on my phone here that I'm looking at too. So outside of your job, right? What does I guess you could start with this. This is actually a good question. So it's like, what outside of your job, like what have you been interested in doing, right? What are you doing professionally? And then what are you just like doing for fun? Because now you're in a better position and you have probably maybe your whole routine too. One thing I could say to give you help, as an example, is when I was first working, I like always just worked and I didn't really take enough time to enjoy other than maybe like hanging out with my friends. But nowadays, like I try to like go a lot more to the gym and I take that very seriously. I spend a lot of time like learning to cook because I feel like that's fun in itself and it helps me actually in the week, like kind of not have to worry about eating bad food. I'm like all prepared and then I can just focus on work. So stuff like that. Like what improvements have you made like in your own life from all the stuff that you learned? Like I'd be curious to hear.
So I started my engineering career during COVID. My first job was May of 2020. So I'm very used, like my jobs have always been remote. Even at the new company, I'm remote. So it definitely took me a long time to figure out how to log off because I don't know that coding can be really addicting, especially if you end your day and you're in the middle of a task or you've run into a bug and you're like, I don't want to log off until I've figured this thing out. It's so hard to let go of things.
That's the healthy part for sure.
So I definitely made the mistake early on in my career of I'm going to keep going until I figure out this one thing. Like I want to be able to end my day with a very clear, I finished this thing. But I've had to let go of that. And I don't always do a good job of that, but I've been trying to be better about, okay, when it's time to log off, I'm logging off regardless of the state of my code. Try to get it in a point where I can pick up tomorrow and it'll make sense to some degree, but not worry too much about I need to have something very concrete to show at the end of the day. It's okay if your like code isn't compiling when you log off. It's okay. The work's not going to end.
It's hard actually, like just putting that away, especially when you feel like it's not finished.
Yes. Yeah. It's very hard, but it's important to do that. And I found a lot of times that if I was really stuck at the end of the day, coming back to it with fresh eyes the next day, I was like, oh my God, how did I not realize that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's almost like you're just going to end up wasting your time and like logging off all frustrated. Just you'll come back next day and hopefully make more sense. So I've been trying to be better about doing that. I try to actually leave my house, but because that helps me log off. Otherwise, it's still like in the back of my head somewhere. So I've been trying to do a lot more. I started playing soccer again. I had not been, when I first started, I was not playing. So I've been doing that, doing some sort of activity. I started doing more like arts and crafts too. I just started a stained glass class, which I'm like super excited about. But doing something that is, it's funny when I would talk to my boyfriend sometimes, I feel silly like explaining to someone who has a more like manual labor kind of job. Like I felt so silly being like, I'm exhausted at the end of the day when I've just been sitting at my desk. Like, what do I have to complain about? But it is like mentally draining. So I've been trying to be better about when I'm not working, doing things that are a little bit easier on the brain, like more creative, more physical, so that you have a break. Your brain can rest a little bit to hit the ground running the next day.
Yeah, exactly. I think the physical aspect is often overlooked, especially by like developers. You are really like, I know you're not like moving physically when you're coding, but you are stressing your mind a lot.
Yeah.
And like you have a lot of this cortisol effect, I think that's in your body, because you might be like, oh, I'm on pressure, I'm on deadline, I need to get this done. I don't want to look stupid. And you have to fight your emotions. So like for me, I have to really detox all that out each day. And so the answer that I gave myself after a lot of time, and I thought a lot about this is why I'm actually interested in hearing you explain your side. But like, for me, I really thought, okay, when I'm outside of like the coding environment, I want to just be really physical. So I want to move things. I want to lift weights. I want to run. Like I like running a lot. Although now like I have a bad knee a little bit, so I do jump rope.
Okay. That's a good workout.
It's really hard. And like for me, who's uncoordinated and I'm like unbalanced a lot, like I've had to learn all these things about like coordination and balance. Yeah. Muscle strength and like different parts of my body, especially like legs, calves, quads, hamstrings. All that. Actually, I'm getting really good education right now on like the muscle in the body.
Okay.
Like I do that and I feel a lot better because once I sweat a lot, like I feel like, okay, I've taxed my body now, the pressure's off my brain and I can have a better rest at night.
Yeah.
And the other things I try to do is just be like, I know it sounds cliche a little bit, but I try to like just do a lot more of the breathing exercises and just being present. Like, so, you know, with my family somewhere, or if I'm like having coffee or something, I just try to enjoy that moment and not think about anything else.
Yeah.
Because when I'm there and I do that, it's okay. I can literally feel like the release.
Yeah.
And then the good ideas start to come back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's such a good point because that's what I was saying before, that depending on how I choose to spend my time after work, I'm not actually, even though I am not at my computer, somewhere in the back of my brain, I'm still thinking about that like bug that I was working on earlier. Like you have to be intentional about actually don't think about that anymore. So meditation seems like a good way of doing that.
Yeah, it's almost the process leaves like from the front part of your brain, like the front end, if you were to call it like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Then it goes to a batch process in the back of your head, or if you want to call it a neural network or something like that.
Yeah.
It just sits there and it's nice because you're not like actively thinking about it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you, just out of curiosity, are you like paying attention to AI or neural networks or anything like that?
Somewhat. I feel like a lot of the talk around AI ends up being a little bit like scary for developers. So I feel like I end up being like, I don't want to think about that. I try to keep up enough where I know what's going on, but not enough where I'm gonna be like freaking out. Although I don't agree with I'm not sure that I'm on the side of our jobs are in danger, but
Yeah. Actually, I would like you to open up a little bit about what do you think of AI, just for this audience.
yeah, I think I'll be honest, when you first started becoming a popular thing, I want nothing to do with it. It's not as great as everyone says. It's gonna pass and it's gonna be another. But now I feel like I have a more balanced opinion of it. Like, I see the value in it and I think that it can really help developers, but I don't see it as a threat. I see it more as a complement to what we do. There is not a lot, but there are aspects of what we do that are repetitive. And I think that our time can be better spent. There are things that AI can't do that we can do. And that's where like we should be spending our time and using AI for the tasks that like are more mundane and that, okay, I know how to do that thing. I've had enough practice doing that. I can automate that and spend my time doing something else. Like,
Exactly.
Writing tests is a good example. I think that if you're just learning to write tests, don't use AI for it. Learn how to write tests, understand it. Once you've got the hang of that, then you can use AI to write the tests for you. I still think that I use GitHub Copilot. Sometimes it does not write the test the way that I want it, so I still have to go back to them a bit.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a place for it in our workflow for sure. But I don't think it should be seen as like a threat to what I did. Especially not where it's at now.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think the last time I spoke to you too, I think we were talking a little bit about maybe themes for the year for Hackney and stuff like that. So AI was one of them, and job relevancy and all this, because these are again real world questions that I think we do want to answer. We want to be prepared ourselves, right? We're both in this field and we want to know. So what is the consensus on this? What's the general thing?
Yeah.
I've started, I would say I went through a little bit of the same phase, right? Like at the beginning, I thought this is a gimmick.
Yeah.
It's just another extension for like my VS Code where it's pattern, stuff like that. But then I spent some time with it and just trying to understand like, why is there so much hype about it?
Yeah.
And like, I started to understand, okay, this thing is actually pretty legit. There is a lot of work put into this field, and the machines that they're using are really state of the art to create like the responses that they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately I view it, I think like to myself sometimes when I look at it, the way it helped me in all the tools we have now, I view it as like the great library, right? It's like a library 2.0 or 3.0 if you want.
Yeah.
Because you're never going to know everything. Like you just can't.
Yeah.
And in the way that we have libraries today and even in the past, people had to go to a library and find something that they didn't know, like they find the answer to something they didn't know.
Yeah.
So the old way of doing it is going to the library, maybe asking the librarian first to search for this thing, and then getting the book and then reading through the book.
Yeah.
Then you would say, I guess, like we had the internet, which made it easy to just type the question, and then now Google became the librarian and started giving you all these results back, and it managed like the back end of all the data. Now, like you're getting to this third phase where you're getting it instantly. Like you don't even need to find the book anymore.
Yeah.
Librarian is good enough to find the page with the answer on it. And, okay, that's what I needed. But then compare it, like you're writing code yourself, right? Let's say, hey, I want to write a unit test, but I'm not sure exactly how I should structure it. Do you know how to write a unit test? You ask the librarian to write the unit test for you, but you know it better because you know that this is more of a generic thing that could work with your code. It might be predictive, but you're ultimately still taking responsibility for the whole project. It's not just that.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, because I do see it as, I think what I've learned, a way that I've learned to use it is that it helps you learn faster.
Yeah.
Particularly with like documentation, right? Or if you're trying to learn like a new framework or something, it is pretty powerful okay, I'm learning this new thing and I want just like a general sense of like, how does this all fit together? Like you can pull up information so much quicker than before. So it definitely accelerates your learning. But like you said, it's still being the captain of the ship. And But I love that analogy.
I'll be honest with you too. I spent a lot of time like with ChatGPT and Gemini, especially for work as of recently.
Okay.
And it ties a lot back into what we were saying at the beginning. I think like my own personal use of AI so far has been like a good mentor. It's like definitely helping me train myself better
Yeah.
to be like in the field and being like, I know a lot of people feel intimidated by AI, but I feel like if you spent time with it and you like used it, it can remove a lot of roadblocks, a lot of that emotion block that we talked about that blocks you. Because I would
Yeah.
like for the beginning of my career, like the last 5 years or whatever, this is a lot longer ago, like at the beginning of 5 years, I would say I was like very much like worried about what people thought of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in this company with other senior engineers and they would look at me and think, oh, who are you? You're some junior guy. You claim to be like, you're really smart. Well, do you know this code or that code or this
Yeah.
code? And you'd have to like constantly be on the spot, hot seat.
Yeah.
Like nowadays with like more formalized training, boot camps and all this stuff, it's not just AI. You have a chance to be vulnerable, to ask for mentorship, to ask for that guidance. And then like with the AI component too, like you can, again, ask for guidance and you can become like a better version of you than if you were just like to hang out with a bunch of dorks who will just like make fun of you, right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. No, I agree with you. I have come to use AI more of a buddy kind of thing. Or, oh, I have this idea. Does that make sense? Or just, and I think it goes both ways. There are times where I'm like asking for help with something from ChatGPT or something. And I'll be like, wait a minute, can you explain to me why that is? And sometimes it'll be like, oh no, you're actually right. That doesn't. So it can be more of a dialogue. And I think it's like healthy to both use it as a sounding board, but also you should also question it sometimes too. Don't assume that it's always right. But it is like what you said, like almost a mentor. Yeah. Like running things by it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. I think like ultimately, like we're all probably like different like opinions on like where AI will go and
Yeah.
the whole replacing job thing. I think like the people who stand to get replaced really, this is my personal opinion again, I'd be interested in your take though, but it's just, I think if you're somebody who doesn't want to like grow or doesn't want to like I just want to do this one thing forever, right? You're just like, I just want to only work on React projects or only jQuery projects. I would say you're seeing that actually in real time because I've seen people like that. They're like, oh, when I was doing React at the beginning, people were like, why do you need React or Angular? Let's just use jQuery. I don't want to use React. I don't like learning new stuff. And they got replaced, right? And then it came back to like people who were into Flash and they didn't want to learn JavaScript. They got replaced, right? Same thing with even Ruby on Rails. And a lot of people said Ruby on Rails is the great framework. You don't need anything else. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It writes elegant code and it's everything. They're the ones who didn't want to embrace JavaScript, but JavaScript ended up becoming more popular. I've always been code agnostic and I'm always like, I'm just here to learn and build stuff. And I want to build stuff and whatever's the best thing to do. So I feel like that's where we are now. Like AI gives you like the ability to like, yeah, you can code faster with it, but what new things can you solve with it? With mindset, right? Like you're getting a new mindset with it. And that's what's valuable to the market as opposed to just being like, no, I only studied React and I just do React jobs.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like that's like, there's nothing to be ultimately like afraid of. I think it's just for us people in our field, we always are like fatigued probably from studying so much.
Yeah.
What I would advise actually is a good detoxify system. If anything, that's what people should be investing in.
Yeah, I guess that's like counterintuitive advice. It feels like that's the wrong advice, but that probably is the most important piece of advice.
Yeah, because you ultimately, I think, like, right, again, I'm giving a lot of opinions here today, but I think it is really much about your own ability to deal with these pressures day by day. There's going to be like pressure and fire and environment, but it's like you have to learn, like you said, communication is very important, but you also have to learn like how to like just take the heat off.
Yeah.
Balance.
Yeah, it's very important. Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying before, that like that feels like the draining like difficult part about being an engineer is that side. Like there's just always, even just especially if you're like a product engineer, right? There's always something else that needs to be built last week that it should have been done. There's always going to be that. Being able to manage that is a very important skill. You need to be able to talk yourself down from this is not that big of a deal at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not a big deal. That's what I would be in agreement with you.
Yeah.
Okay, it is pretty much 3 o'clock here, but I guess like for anything else before we call it a day, you want to closing stuff you want to talk about? What are you thinking about next as next steps or anything? What are you going to do after this?
I'm going to go get some stained glass supplies so I can start on my next project. But next steps, yeah, I don't know. I would just encourage people to, I know the job market is like very tough right now, and it can feel like you're not doing enough or doing the wrong things. The answer is probably no. That I think as long as you are willing to learn, willing to adapt, there's a place in this industry for you. That'll be my closing statement.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a great encouraging piece of advice. I think there's a place for you if you have those winning like skill sets. It's really not just about coding, right? It's about being able to just hang on to the core advice we talked about.
Yeah.
Is there a way for people to follow you if they're interested, like in seeing your journey? And
yeah, I'm not on or anything like, or X now, I guess it is, but you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't know if I can like drop a comment or something. I can
place it in the titles afterwards.
Yeah, you can follow me there. But I'm not the most active on it, but you can follow me there, and I'm always like down to chat. I love doing coffee chats and stuff. If I can encourage anyone who is like early on in their career or learn from someone who is further on than me, I love doing random chats like this. So always open to that if you reach out. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. And I would say take advantage of that for anyone who's listening, who is a HackBuddy community person. You can always say that you found the video on HackBuddy and trying to increase your network, because we all know, it's an unspoken thing, but it's not just what you know, it's who you know. So if you reach out and improve your network a little bit each day, you're more guaranteed to find work in the future and keep the work or keep working around really talented people. So I want to encourage that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't be afraid. I won't reject you.
There you go. She won't reject you. So. Thank you so much, Sylvana. I enjoyed this conversation, and I will be uploading this soon. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and we'll hope to see you again later down the year. I want to hearing from you, like your accomplishments and things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.